gentlemen, welcome to the newest episode of the Leafs Line podcast. I'm the host for today, Evan Davis, and I'm joined with Jared Rotenberg and Mario Russo. We put Adama Ramoli on IR. He has a sore throat, so we're hoping for a speedy recovery with him. And in today's episode, we are going to be discussing the NHL trade deadline is coming up within the next month or so. And we have a couple players who we think are going to be on the move, switching cities. And without further ado, the big name, or one of the big names, is Jakob Chikran, defenseman for the Arizona Coyotes. He has a $4.5 million cap hit over the next 4 years. So it's very intriguing for the skill he can bring. He's also only 23 years old. So a team can snag him up until he's a UFA, and then he could re-sign with that team, or he heads into free agency. But wow, like a lot of teams, they need that number one, number two defenseman. And I think Jakob Chikrin can really be that guy. My prediction that I have is I think he's going to end up with the Boston Bruins. I think going in Arizona's direction will be Jake Debrusk, Jacob Zaboral, and a first-round pick. And I just think with Arizona, what they want, they're still in that rebuild stage. Jacob Zaboral is a young defenseman. Jake Debrusk, they were both in that same draft back in 2015. They both really want to change of scenery. The playing time in Boston just isn't up to their liking. And I think they can really enjoy a lot of playing time in Arizona and just kind of proving themselves again. So, Mario, I'll start with you. What's your prediction for Jakob Chikrin?
Well, I definitely think teams are going to bite on him. There's so much, I wouldn't say, well, maybe upside's a good word. The contract's pretty darn good for a player of his capabilities, and I believe it has term, if I'm not mistaken. So financially, it's very stable, and a lot of teams are going to like that. I can see him maybe going to a couple Pacific teams. We were discussing it, I believe, on our last episode of the Leafs Line podcast. I can see maybe an up-and-coming team like the Kings maybe going to bite on him and giving up this Jack Eichel-esque value that they want back. Maybe even the Anaheim Ducks. It'd be terrific to see him play with that young decor. So there's so many other teams that can go out and get him. So I'm not worried about him moving to a team. I think that's going to happen for sure. It's just, I don't know if I really agree with what the value is set at. We were talking about it before, obviously. That's a lot of things. Like Jake Debrusk, I know the trade talks have been sparking. He doesn't want to be in Boston anymore. And as a Leafs fan, I don't blame you because nobody ever wants to be in Boston. But no, there's some tension there. Jacob Zaboral is a great player as well and a first-round pick. I don't know if Jakob Chikrin is there yet. Mind you, only had one great season, so it's not like he has strung anything very serious together. So Jakob Chikrin definitely going to land somewhere by the trade deadline. That's a guarantee. Where it is, I don't know. Maybe there's going to be a big fish, a Stanley Cup contending team that's going to want to go bite on him and take an offer and maybe even put themselves in a bit of a cap crunch. But no, I don't think the value is correct with him yet. I still got to see a bit more from Jakob Chikrin, but he's definitely going to be going somewhere in the next couple of months.
Yeah, and I just think the value stems from 23 years old. You know, he hasn't hit his prime yet, but I think they want Jack Eichel-esque because they know what the value could be in 3 years once he's a UFA. So, yeah, Jared, what were your predictions on Jakob Chikrin?
Well, yeah, I think your guys' analysis on the type of player that this is are very accurate. This is very much a player with a lot of potential because of, first of all, he's young in age. He has a solid deal. It's not that it's a good deal. It's 4.6-ish million. So it's a great deal. It's still expensive for a team to just go out and acquire that. So it still would require a team to kind of unload a contract if they were to make the effort to get him. But in general, he's a very good player. And I think there's a lot of teams that will be surely in the mix to get a player like this. A team that I was really thinking, and it's a team that not only I think Jakob Chikrin is the accurate player that I think is necessarily the best fit for them, but in general, I think a team that's going to be very active at this year's deadline is the team of the Nashville Predators, who personally, my prediction going into this season is that they were not going to be a very good team. I personally predicted them to be just above the Arizona Coyotes and 7th in the Central. But considering they've very much overachieved, and currently, I believe, at least as of the last time I checked, they sat at first place overall in the Central. I think they're going to be very active at this deadline with kind of acquiring pieces. The question is going to be, is the person they really go after a defenseman, or is it going to be more they're going to want to polish out their forward core and become a more deep team? Because that is a criticism that I personally was very much hammering them with at the beginning of the season. So I think that's a team that could potentially be interested in him. I think they have enough valuable players on their team there that they'd maybe have someone they want to flip there. And if they are truly going to start becoming a contending or a team that's jumping out of mediocrity, which it looks like they're playing like at this point, then maybe they'll have some contracts and young players that they're more willing to get rid of. So I think that's a player to be interested. Sorry, I think that's a team to be interested in. They currently looking at their cap space situation. They have approximately, it looks like $10.8 million in projected cap space by the end of the season. So they have quite a bit of money there, and they definitely would have the room to acquire a guy like this. Another team that I'd maybe look at is a team like the New Jersey Devils, who, yes, they have a lot of expensive deals. I mean, of course, they have PK Subban and Dougie Hamilton with some very pricey contracts on D. But if they could somehow add a defenseman like Jacob Chikran, that could very much be the piece that they're missing right now and the piece they need to jumpstart them from not only a team on the rise, but now that could make them become an actual, truly competitive and dangerous team just to add to an already dangerous division in the Metropolitan. So I think there's a lot of very interesting routes that Jacob Chikrin could take. Of course, considering he has a no movement clause, the decision of where he goes, it's not entirely in his favor, but it definitely, he has a little bit of leeway and he has a little bit of say of the teams that he doesn't want to go to, and as well the teams that he ultimately will end up going to. So it'll be very interesting to see him. He's absolutely the biggest fish right now heading into this deadline, or still about 2-ish months away from the deadline, because I looked at it, it's actually late in March, which is super strange. But in general, heading into and starting this 2022 deadline talk, Jacob Chikrin's absolutely going to be the biggest storyline there, because there's a lot of different routes that he can take.
Yeah, and I'm looking at Cap Friendly right now. I didn't realize Nashville is they spent their money on the forward crew, and their defense. I didn't even realize they don't have a lot of big names. They just have a lot of gritty guys.
They're
on
a good
defense.
hockey team, Evan. They are the definition, in my opinion. I sorry to cut you off. They're the definition of a hockey team. They're always, even when they're out, they're still in it. It marvels.
Well, yeah, they also have great goaltending. I mean, they strike gold on the European goalies. I mean, Pekka Rinne retires, and then here comes UC Saros, and I mean, he's just playing unbelievable. I think he's a dark horse for the Vezina, the way he's playing. And I didn't even just realize their defense. They don't have a lot of big names. They just have guys who can do what they need to do. And Roman Josi, he had a lackluster year last year, but he's really responded, leading the team in points. And I was also thinking New Jersey for Jacob Chikrin as well. So that's why I was like, oh, wow. I was surprised you said that too. I thought that would be such a perfect fit, given how young Jack Hughes is, and then bring in Jacob Chikrin. And then they also have Luke Hughes coming up. That could be great as well. And then the next player, Ben Sherratt, another defenseman, Montreal, 30 years of age. He has a $3.5 million cap hit. He is a free agent at the end of this year. My prediction is Toronto, just because I think with all the stuff I hear with Jake Muzzin and Justin Hall, the defense in 3 through 6 is just not working out the way that Toronto has hoped this year. And I had the prediction, I'm changing it now. I had it as Pierre Engvall in a third. I talked to the boss man. He says that's not enough. So I'm going to go with Pierre Engvall, and then that the Leafs trade their first round pick this year, because I do think Ben Sherratt is a guy that they'll be able to keep. He's going to want maybe a little bit of a raise, but I think his cap hit's just manageable enough for this year that the Leafs can really bolster that defensive core. And we talk about the playoffs. It's all about the nitty gritty. And I think Ben Sherratt paired with a guy like Travis Dermott would just be so beautiful for the Toronto Maple Leafs down the stretch. And Mario, what do you think? Where do you see Ben Sherratt ending up? And then I also want to throw you this. Do you think Ben Sherratt is a rental for most teams?
I mean, I don't know how much value, you gotta look at the defensive structure of Ben Sherratt, what he brings to the table. He's a physical guy, big body. He's not going to put up points for you whatsoever. And he can usually play a shutdown defensive game. I remember watching him in that Montreal Leafs series last spring. That was a terrific series from him. He carried a lot of the minutes, and another thing too, he'll eat up a lot of your minutes as well. So I think the value set a little differently than a guy like Jacob Chikrin, for example. I do think he's not going to be a rental. Maybe he can come and stay. It's all depending on what he wants to go and where he wants to go. Remember, we were talking before we jumped on the show, he has a no movement clause. Which teams lie on that? Who's going to know? Teams I think that he should go for. I 100% agree the Maple Leafs are up there. I think they absolutely should go pursue. We were talking Vince Dunn in our last episode of the podcast as well. I think Ben Sherrod's maybe an even more expensive version of Vince Dunn. And I think he just brings so much value to this team. And you mentioned Jake Muzzin, Justin Hall. They've been struggling this year. Ben Sherrod, I think he's going to be a lot more consistent if he was to play in that lineup. Maybe a top forward role. Maybe you can sit him on the bottom pairing as well, but it would be a little odd if you have a guy making 3.5 sitting on your bottom pairing. So definitely on that second defensive unit. And another team that I could see maybe taking a push at him, and if obviously he's not on the no movement clause, of course, New York Rangers. I love their defensive core, but I think it can get a little bit bolstered with a guy like Ben Sherrod. There's no team in the NHL right now who's not going to want to take a guy like Ben Sherrod, a big body that can play a good defensive game. He's valued very highly in which the direction teams want to go. So I think the New York Rangers might be a good one. I think that can bolster their blue line, and it's never a bad idea to have that many defensive options. They got Trouba, who's been terrific this season. Adam Fox, who's just you don't even have to go in depth about him. He's a wonder point per game player. If you could stick a Ben Sherrod maybe beside beside Adam Fox, I think it could maybe work. I don't know. It's up to what the Rangers want to do, but these are the two teams I'm going to have to offer, and Toronto would be the leading one, I hope. And I think it might be a pretty easy push for them to make if they can go against Ben Sherrod.
Yeah, and we just got to also remember, like, guys can easily waive their no move clause, no trade clause. Like, if they say, oh, like, Toronto offers, like, Toronto wants you, but they're on your no move, he can just say, screw it, let's waive it, and then he can get traded to Toronto. Jared, where do you have Ben Sherrod heading out if he does indeed get traded?
Well, to be honest, I think the first two teams that both of you guys mentioned are the teams that I initially had in mind. I think, of course, Toronto, when you explain it like that, it is such a perfect fix. We need more of that big body type of defenseman. So I think he would be a perfect fit on our team. And I don't think the asking price is high enough that Debrusk would maybe be scared away. I think it's absolutely a deal that Debrusk can maybe start to entertain. But another name, because the New York Rangers, just looking at cap friendly in their cap space, whatever, they were the team that I was about to bring up. But of course, Mario went out on them. So I think those are probably my top two. But then the other team that was sort of caught my eye a little bit was an interesting one, the Minnesota Wild, who they're doing very well right now. And they happen to have a lot of guys who are injured. But just looking at their roster, looking at their team defense, like on daily faceoff and stuff, it isn't actually as strong as you maybe expect from a team that's playing as well as they are. Of course, they have guys who are injured, and they have Jared Spurgeon, who's injured right now. But in general, aside from that, looking at their defense pairings, they have Matthew Dumba, they have guys like John Merrill, Kulikov, guys like that. But then they have Kalen Addison, who's a young guy. They have Jordy Ben, who's just old as rocks, and like he's strong, but he doesn't really do much else. So there's definitely, as much as their decor is fine, I think there is room to add to it. And I think a guy that would definitely slot in, like, this isn't a team that I think needs a Jacob Chikran, but maybe a more low-key, quiet, just a guy that does their job right, even if they aren't flashy or anything. They just hit, they're a big body, and they do their job right. And I think Minnesota is definitely a team that I can see being in the mix to get a guy that's kind of quiet like that, like Ben Sherrod, of course. So I think that is a team that for sure I could see being interested in him, especially, I mean, they're a good team that's pretty much looking like a lock to make the playoffs. Last year, of course, they got eliminated in Game 7 to Vegas. They have a lot of pressure now because they haven't really been in the past few years that's been able to go on a run similar to a million other teams we know. So I think it would be very interesting if they did go out to get a big body, tough defenseman. That would just make them even harder to play against.
Yeah, and I think it'd be great, not a lot of teams like a team like Minnesota, they don't need like the flashy players. Like, that's not really their play style. It's not the way that they're used to playing. They just need guys who are willing to do their job and be a big body. And although Ben Sherrod doesn't provide any offensive upside, I think he just provides like penalty kill, defense, like just what most playoff teams need right now. And you can never have enough of those. And third guy that we brought up was Jake Debrusk. We said I have him in that Arizona deal if it does present itself with Jacob Chikrin. But another interesting one that I was thinking about was flip-flopping Jake Debrusk for Dylan Strome 1-for-1, just because obviously Dylan Strome, he just hasn't worked out with Chicago. I don't know what the deal is, but I just really think he could thrive. Dylan Strome could really thrive in the way that the Boston Bruins play and their play style. And he doesn't really need to do much with them. And I just think maybe the pressure of being a top pick and you're playing with guys like Kane and Taves, I don't know if that's what it is. But other than that, like what I had originally was was Dylan Strome going to Ottawa to kind of like start like complete their rebuild. I thought that would be like interesting for him. I thought he could get a lot of playing time there, but yeah, I don't know. It's tough with these young guys because you just don't know like how teams value them. And a guy like Dylan Strome, who hasn't really shown much in the time that he's been given. So I mean, I don't know, Mario. What do you think about where do you think Jake Debrusk or Dylan Strome end up? Could you see a flip flop?
I definitely do believe a flip flop is on the table. I think Jake Debrusk with the Boston Bruins, if they're going to go make a trade, he's the first guy that's going to be on the table. So I'm pretty certain he's going to go to any team that they want to make a trade with. If the Boston Bruins are making a deal at the deadline, Jake Debrusk is probably in that package. So to go to Dylan Strome here, I'm really caught between what Dylan Strome is. Like you were saying, with a young guy like him, it's so hard to tell what he's going to bring to the table in the next 3 to 4 years. I want to turn this over to you guys very briefly before I make my point a little more, maybe what team he's going to head towards. But where do you set his value? Is he a star player, like a star young player that can fit along a top 6 role, or is he turning more into a depth forward that a lot of teams can go bite at? Because that's where I'm caught in the middle. Where do you set his value? Because that's going to determine what you're getting back in a deal.
I think you have to give him a little bit of leeway. Like, you can't purely put his value at depth forward because he could so easily kind of break out of that. So I think you have to give him a little bit of benefit of the doubt. And when a team's acquiring him, I think they would have to give up a little bit more just because the potential's there. However, his value is not star status anymore. It just isn't. He's fallen from that. I think it's got to be somewhere in the middle because you have to acknowledge that stories like this have happened where players have not been working out on. It's not only one team anymore, it's multiple teams now he's not working out on. But there's stories there where a player's just gotten the right opportunity and ended up thriving. So for that reason, I don't think a team's going to be stupid and give him up for nothing. However, he also is not going to fetch that maybe star status deal that a few years ago he'd be in the mix for. It's just the value isn't there anymore. He's kind of fallen from grace a little bit.
Yeah, I'm just like, if I'm a team, it's like, do I really want to give up a 2nd round pick for Dylan Strome? But I just have a feeling that if Chicago does make a deal, that's what they're going to want. But I just don't know. Like, a 2nd round pick is a lot of value. And Dylan Strome has just been so inconsistent. You know, in 2018, 2019 season, he had 57 points in 78 games. He had 20 goals that season. And then 2019 2020 I'm sorry, not 2019 2020 in that I'm sorry 2019 2020 he had 38 points in 58 games, but that was when he was playing with Kane and DeBrincat. So it's like he hasn't really strived with like competition that isn't exponentially better than him. So look, I just don't know what they value him at, but I'll like to hear what you say though.
Yeah, so I mean, if there was a couple teams that came to mind, I think you hinted at it before. The Ottawa Senators, I think he can really do well with the young core. I think he needs a new set of scenery first and foremost. I don't think Chicago is the place that's going to work out for him whatsoever. He's playing with those top players too. It's not like he's not getting any sort of opportunities to play with good players. He's always with Patrick Kane on that first unit, and just he's not getting the points from it, and year in, year out too. It's not just an anomaly here. He can't really play with those really big guns. Maybe he needs a new spot. I think Ottawa's a good place. Maybe you could stick him in that core. Maybe he can become part of that core piece that they're trying to build down in the nation's capital. And you can also maybe hint at the Detroit Red Wings. They're a young team that is on the uprise. Even the New Jersey Devils, you want to throw their name in there as well. I don't know the cap space, but I'm sure both these teams have much more cap space than we think because they're in that stage where they're supposed to be spending money in the next couple of years. So I think Dylan Strome might be one that they want to hit, take a chance on. And I don't think it's really a chance. You have some upside with the contract, not even a bad contract. There's a lot of years to him. I think he's 24 years old. So you got a lot of age to work with. Financially, it's good. And I don't know how much term he's got in it, but you can really make something roll if you're a young team rebuilding and a young player going on a young team. I don't think it gets any better than that.
Yeah, then Jared, I just want to hear, like, if you had one team in mind that would make sense for a guy like Dylan Strome.
I think the Edmonton Oilers. I think a team that consistently I hammer them with the kind of analysis that sure they have their top heavy stars, but there's such a lack of depth forwards on that team that I think this is a team he could absolutely slot in as much as he wouldn't necessarily, like, I'm not saying go and put him next to Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl as much as if he earns that, that would be cool. Because as you said, that isn't like he's been getting those opportunities with star players. So that isn't what I think is going to get him going. But I think it's the fact that their top six is pretty set now that they have guys like Zach Hyman, Leon Draisaitl, Connor McDavid. But there's such a lack of kind of identity and core on that bottom six on the Edmonton Oilers. And it's just very, even just looking at the lines, like, just super random players that I think why not throw them there and kind of see how it sticks, see what happens. So I think that's a team that I really look at that they need to do something to keep them relevant and keep them competitive, which is a shame to say considering the star power that they have. But I think they have such a lack of depth on that team that Dylan Strome has enough talent that I'd say slot him in there, let him play with other high draft picks and other guys like Jesse Puljujarvi, Ryan McLeod, guys like that. And maybe he finds magic. I mean, maybe he doesn't. Of course, there's that storyline there too. It hasn't worked out on multiple of the teams he's gone to. He's already on his third team, I believe. But
no, it's his second team.
Or it's his second, sorry. But still, it didn't work out in Arizona. It for a little bit looked like it was working out in Chicago, but he has gone back to mediocrity there strikingly fast. So I think try him out with a third team, try him out with Edmonton. And that is a team that absolutely could take him. I mean, for $3 million, it's not crazy expensive. They have enough forwards that I'd consider to be expendable, that they could flip one of their kind of more, I'd call them unnecessary, or one of their more, I don't even want to say depth because they're just one of their worst forwards. Like, just get rid of them. Like, at this point, kind of swap out what they have currently for something that'll make them better and make them actually competitive. And I think Dylan Strome has enough upside and potential there. Why not put him on a team with Connor McDavid and see what happens?
Yeah. I mean, just the one thing with Edmonton is that they have zero cap space.
That's what I was going to say as well.
So they're going to need to trade salary for salary. So it could be interesting. They just have zero leeway whatsoever. Continuing with the forwards, I said Riley Smith originally. I wanted to switch it to Evgeny Dadonov of the Vegas Golden Knights. Obviously, with Jack Eichel returning very soon, say within the next month or so, Vegas needs to clear cap space. And Evgeny Dadonov is currently on the last year of a 3-year, $15 million deal that he signed with Florida 2 years ago. And I just think Vegas just needs maybe, I would say, like a third round pick and like a measly prospect, like nothing too insane, or even if just trade the pick, and that's just for the sake of salary dump. I don't know. I didn't really have a team in mind. I just, that was just kind of my prediction. But moving on to another big defenseman is John Klingberg. There's rumors around that he told Dallas that he wants a trade. Those rumors have kind of simmered down to now he said he doesn't want to trade. He wants to stay there, but Dallas isn't offering him what he wants. He wants a huge pay raise from the $4.25 million that he's currently earning. So my prediction that I had originally was Hampus Lindholm, like trade contract, kind of trade player for player, dealing with both guys on expiring deals. But now I've kind of leaned towards John Klingberg maybe going to LA, and because LA has the cap space for it. They have the players for it. And I just think John Klingberg, although he's 29, if the Kings could then sign him for maybe 4 years at $7 million, I think that would be totally fine. Then you get him till he's 33, and then you can kind of have him while during the times of Byfield and Turcotte and Arthur Kaliev and those guys. But it's just hard when you're nearing the age of 30 and you want a big deal, because a lot of teams are screaming for a Cale Makar, Adam Fox, where they're 23, 24, and they're just absolutely disgusting already. Jared, what are your predictions on where Klingberg ends up? Or do you think he also just stays in Dallas and gets a new deal?
To be honest, I think that's looking like the more unlikely route right now. I don't see him staying in Dallas. I think it's just, sure, they had one cup run, but it just hasn't really worked out there. He hasn't really found any true success, in as much as he's been a solid player and he's had one very good offensive year. In general, he just, I think, needs a change of scenery. It's not something that's desperate. He's a good player in Dallas. But I think at this point, he kind of wants a chance with a run at another team. For that reason, another team that, I brought them up earlier, but if they don't end up going for Jacob Chikrin, I could see the Nashville Predators absolutely being in on Klingberg. I think he's just such a good player. And I think they have the cap space there and are very much looking to add to their decor because they surprisingly are looking like a team that's going to be in the playoffs and may even end up going on a run. And then Klingberg would be such a good addition to bring to this team. If they want to be competitive, already they have Roman Yossi. Adding John Klingberg there would just be so impactful for the team. But in general, then if you also want to look at the other teams, sort of like the LA Kings type teams, that I think there's a lot of young, not too good teams with a ton of cap space that are looking to jumpstart the rebuilds. And I think adding a guy like John Klingberg might be the way to do it for a team that's sort of on the up and out, like in LA, like in Anaheim, even in Detroit, just teams that their prospects are now starting to develop into solid NHL players. And they're looking for that one big piece to take them from developing into stardom. And when a guy like John Klingberg is on the board, I think a lot of young teams with a ton of money to spend might absolutely jump on that. So I think the more realistic one I'm giving is Nashville. However, the maybe more fun one, I can absolutely see some young teams like Detroit and LA and those guys really being in on it, maybe flipping some prospects, maybe flipping some depth in order to get this guy onto their team to have them for when they're finally a competitive team moving forward.
Yeah, for sure. And I think maybe with John Klingberg, nearing 30, I want to win a Stanley Cup. He hasn't done that yet. He got close versus Tampa Bay, but it's also just a lot of these competitive teams, unlike Nashville, though, they just don't have the cap room to accommodate for this 8x8, which I think is absolutely ridiculous given his age. Like if you wanted an 8x8, you needed to sign that when you were an RFA, not when you're a UFA, when you're about to be a UFA. So, and no team wants to hold on to a defenseman until they're 37 years of age. That's just kind of 35 seems to be the cutoff for most teams. But Mario, where do you think, and if you had any contenders in mind of where Klingberg could end up?
Well, I think you said it best just before I jumped on. He wants to win a Stanley Cup, no doubt about that. And if you want to win a Stanley Cup, you can't be asking for 8x8. You're scaring so many buyers away. There's no contending team right now, at least for me. And I don't really consider yet the Nashville Predators a contending team. I think they're in the mix, but not one of those top 5 teams that are really going to go for the cup. I don't think they got the capital for that right now. That could change, however. I don't see him going to a contending team like the Lightning or any of those big name teams because there's no cap space at all. So you're going to scare away so many buyers for your trip to the cup just because you want to get paid. And if you want to get paid, well, unfortunately, you're going to have to do what Dougie Hamilton did and go to a place down in the sort of rebuild stage, coming out of the rebuild stage, and with some young guys as well, because it's they need to have some term with it. They got to sign him because he's going to be a UFA next summer, or I believe after this summer, I'm not mistaken.
He's a UFA heading into this year.
Yeah, he's a UFA heading into this year. So you're going to have to sign him eventually if you want this guy, and you're going to have to sign him big with what he's asking. So unless, of course, injury or something like that plagues the season this year, which God forbid it does, but he's asking for so much. I think he's going to get so little from it. He's going to go through a rebuilding team, and he's not going to get what he wants in the Stanley Cup. A team that I see maybe I don't know how much the New Jersey Devils have, but I could maybe see them making a run at this. I don't know how the cap spaces work. I don't have it right in front of me. I could be completely wrong. They might not even have anywhere close to $8 million in cap space after the Dougie signing. I don't know, but the
Subban's contract definitely hurts them.
Exactly. They got a lot of I hate to say it because I have a big soft spot for the Devils, but they have a couple bad contracts that they can really move on from. But again, John Klingberg's going to have to go to a team like the New Jersey Devils in that realm. So there's so many of them you can choose from, but no, he's not going to a contending team. And I think he burned his bridge if you ever wanted to go to one.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, like personally for a guy like John Klingberg, I honestly wouldn't go over 6 million with him just because on most teams, he's not going to be your number one. Like most contenders, or if not all contenders, have their number one established. In Boston, it's McAvoy. Tampa Bay, it's Victor Hedman. In Carolina, Carolina is interesting because they actually do have like a bunch of like solid 2s and 3s that have just panned out really well. Obviously, New York Rangers, it's Adam Fox, and I don't know. Like a team that is like. I don't know. It just seems it's very difficult to pan out. Like maybe, I don't know, man. It's just tough. Like what his market's going to be like. And But let's steer away from John Klingberg. And here's an interesting one, and it's Max Domi of the Columbus Blue Jackets. And he just carries a hefty $5.3 million cap hit, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And my prediction is just that he stays, because I just don't know how many teams want to take that on. And also, it's a bad contract for a team to gobble up. If Columbus does end up retaining, let's say, even half of it, then I could see a team like Boston even trying to trade for him. Like their bottom six has been iffy, but they do have prospects coming up. I would also see a team like Tampa Bay. They have injuries galore, and they've just been hit with COVID so bad that I think a guy like Max Domi could really fit well with a coach like John Cooper, or even the New York Islanders or New York Rangers. The Rangers have Barclay Goodrow there. They got Revo. They got some guys, but they don't really have a lot of offensive upside guys. So I could see, like, if Columbus is willing to retain 50% or even like 45% of that deal, like I could see him going to a team like that.
I remember when he came into the league. I don't remember when he was drafted, but I remember when all the hype was around him. He was a top prospect, top six forward, clearly, and he's going to get a lot of minutes, and he just never panned out. I always rooted for Max Domi because his dad, Ty, played with the Leafs for such a great deal of time and has such a great effect on the city, but he just hasn't panned out whatsoever. And now that we're looking at it now with him hopping from team to team, he's not getting a top six role. I think that's completely off the table, and he's getting paid the money to be in a top six role. I would say $5.3 million AAV. That's ridiculous for a guy who's going to sit on Columbus Blue Jackets' third line forward. So I honestly do think he might stay. I think you're making a really solid case with him staying there. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are trending in a decent direction. They got a lot of good prospects coming up. Cody Sillinger, I believe he is. I don't know if it's Cody Sillinger. I know it is. Cole Sillinger. Yes, I remember it started with a C. Sillinger, he's coming up very soon. He's going to be a terrific talent. So they got a lot of pieces coming together. The wheels are in motion for the Columbus Blue Jackets. So he could definitely stay. And if you're going to deal him, you're just going to want to get some draft capital in return. I don't think a player is necessarily going to be able to come back. I think you should really go for prospects or draft capital, because we all know how important it is more than ever in this time with the draft so deep coming up now. I think the Columbus Blue Jackets, he's going to stay with them, but if he goes, you got to be getting a decent haul for him. And if you can maybe take a bit more off of those contending teams and drive your bargaining power, which I think the Columbus Blue Jackets are more than capable of doing, I think they can go a long way with leaving Ty Domi or staying with him as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Columbus Blue Jackets, they currently also own Chicago's first round pick, which is either in 2022 or 2023. It's a conditional, so it just depends on the year. I mean, they got draft capital for days. They have Tampa's third round pick. They have Toronto's fourth round pick, and they have Toronto's sixth round pick in this year's upcoming draft. So, and for a draft that's being so highly regarded, I think a team like Columbus, who they're very confusing. Like they're kind of rebuild, but they also like have decent players. But it's just interesting. Jared, do you even see Max Domi getting moved?
It's unlikely. I think, as you have said, like, your cases for him staying are pretty solid.
Yeah.
I think he likely ends up staying there. The only reason that I can maybe see something is if Columbus is willing to kind of retain some of that, because I don't see a team wanting to take on that salary. I mean, $5.3 million for what he brings the team is just not worth it. It's not good enough. And as much as I think a team would maybe like to acquire a player like that before the playoffs, I think they are going to end up being scared away by the salary. And I don't think Columbus is maybe in as desperate situation as they would have expected to be before the season. I think they're surprisingly doing very fine, not great, but they're doing very solid. That I don't think, unless an absolute steal of a deal is available for them, where they're able to get all this millions of things, like an amazing return, I don't think they're going to be so desperate to get rid of him. I just really don't. I think they're fine with him. I think they are doing well. I think they're definitely overachieving with the group they have, but kind of let it ride, in my opinion. I think, why break it if it doesn't need to be broken right now? Because I think if you do trade Max Domi, you're honestly telling the rest of the league that you're committing to going back down to the shitter when you're actually doing surprisingly well right now. I think they're playing somewhat hot. I don't know their current like past 10 or whatever, but I know standings wise, they're doing all right. keep it up, in my opinion, because unless the perfect deal is there, I don't think you need to be super desperate to get rid of him.
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. Do you see Max Domi being part of the core in the future if he does stay? Like, is he going to be a guy who's going to be with them if they're contending?
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, because I think they obviously they have a guy like Max Domi, and then they drafted a bunch of other guys, of course, Cole Sillinger, and other guys that are kind of like Kent Johnson, guys that are stepping into that lineup soon, and they're going to step in with the older guy on their team being Max Domi, who's already there on the top six. So I think absolutely he becomes even with like completely regardless of his skill and how he's playing. I think just by the nature of the fact that he's compared to these young kids, he's the veteran guy that was there for the rebuild and whatever. I think he has to immediately be considered part of the veteran core despite his age. And he is now what the team is kind of building around. I think absolutely that's what ends up happening. And the fact that they've been pretty mediocre for all these years, they've gathered a couple of pretty good prospects that now they are building around Max Domi, which regardless of how good he is, I think he's part of that group now. And of course they can end up deciding to trade him. But honestly, I think they're fine. I'd say probably what I predict is that they leave him there, unless, again, the perfect deal's there. But what are the chances of that? Because I don't think teams are too desperate to acquire a $5.3 million player who won't even be that effective, most likely, on a playoff team.
Yeah.
So I think most likely he stays there, and they do build around him. They have all these guys coming in the next few years that I could actually see the future in Columbus being somewhat bright. So in my opinion, I kind of keep things as is. Why break it if it doesn't need to be broken?
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I brought up Max Domi is just because his contract's expiring, and I just don't know if Columbus really wants to deal with trying to negotiate with him. And I also just think it would be way too difficult because although he has 16 points in 24 games, a lot of those were just multi-point performances. So, he's not really as consistent. Like, the numbers aren't really telling the whole story there. I just don't see him staying. And I just think like Columbus is trading him just to get something because they obviously just don't want, like, a lot of teams just don't want to lose a guy to free agency. Like, they want to at least just test and see what they can get because it's better than nothing. And another guy, this is interesting to me, is Claude Giroux. I didn't write it down.
I want to talk about him, please. He's interesting.
But Claude Giroux, and I think he's definitely getting traded on the deadline day. He has a no-move clause, but like we've brought up, that can easily – he has the power to waive it. It's not the team. So I think he'll waive that no-move clause, and I think he'll end up on a contender because he wants to win a Stanley Cup, and I just think that's literally – it's just it. He wants to win the cup. And I think a team that could really use him would be a team like the Carolina Hurricanes, who don't have that prolific number ones. I mean, they have Sebastian Aho, but other than that, like, their center depth is just very weak. They have Kakaniemi, who the expectation is that he'll stay there a while after this offer sheet year. But God, can you just imagine that center depth with Claude Giroux? And then they also have Martin Necas, they have Nino Niederreiter, they have Martin Hook. I mean, they got some guys there, and I just think that would be so dope for him to go to Carolina. I was just gonna pull up quickly like what their cap the cap space isn't an issue because
he
makes $8 million, almost $9 million. That is
But that is a tough deadline, bringing on $8 additional million into your team.
It'd be beautiful, though. It'd be beautiful.
I totally get that. But the thing is that teams aren't afraid to just be like, well, because look, Jordan Staal carries a $6 million AAV. Like, you don't think that they would just say, like, just give us Jordan Staal? Like, you could just trade contract for contract. And I think that would just, and they have like the draft picks to do it. They have their first round pick, not this year, but they do have it next year. I just think you could make a trade there. And look, the Philadelphia Flyers aren't really trending in the right direction. So anything they could get to make, and I think they owe it to Claude Giroux to offer him a chance at a Stanley Cup. I mean, for what he's done for the city. So, I mean, like, you don't have to only just look at what cap space they have available, because you can easily just trade contract for contract to even it out. But damn, like a team like Carolina,
He would go to a contending team, I believe. If that's
absolutely, yeah.
There's
He's not leaving.
He's not
to
joking around anymore. He's in for it. He wants a cup badly. He's gonna go get one. And Claude Giroux, like you mentioned, the Philadelphia Flyers absolutely do owe it to this guy. I was gonna ask the question, and this might be I might get backlash. I don't know. Personally, I grew up watching Giroux. I think he's a terrific player. Is he a Hall of Famer? Or is he missing that one thing that all Hall of Famers need?
He hasn't been able to take his team and ultimately win the cup.
That's what I'm
saying. If he gets a ring, I think he'll definitely be in the Hall of Fame. I don't think it'll be first ballot, but I definitely think he'll be in the.
He'll get there.
Oh no, I think he could actually be first ballot, depending on what his class is looking like.
Mm-hmm.
I definitely think he'll be in it if he gets a ring. But like the
Flyers, though, he needs that ring.
He needs the ring to get in
as of today, I wouldn't call him necessarily Hall of Fame.
I don't know. I think I would, but I think it would take him a little bit.
He's a phenomenal player.
He's never taken his team deep, though. Like the Flyers have gone to the playoffs so much with him as a leader, but they haven't gone far.
Yeah,
I think that's the one thing.
I think the ring, but
like, the ring is a huge, and you could say that for a lot of players. Like it's not just him. It's not a criticism on him. It's by the nature you're considered a Hall of Famer when you're able to pull through in the playoffs. Why I criticize my stupid idiots so much is because they haven't been able to do it when the time actually matters.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely for a lot of Hall of Famers, especially a guy like Claude Giroux, that points-wise and through his regular seasons probably should be in that conversation. He hasn't been able to get it done when it really matters. So
where do you think he goes, though?
Giroux?
Team, I think if he is going to leave, I think you're very right. Carolina is absolutely going to be a team that's in the mix there. I think they're a deals there, like you mentioned, the fact that they have some big contracts that could easily be shipped out. I think that is a trade that you would kind of picture happening. And if they do get Claude Giroux, oh my Lord, watch out for the Carolina Hurricanes. But in general, it's tough. And as much as yes, teams could do it, it's doable. But to acquire $8 million in a single deadline is a tough ask.
I mean, like, there's also the possibility again of retaining salary. Like, I think the Flyers.
I get that, and that's why I'm not gonna.
Those are big ifs.
I'm not gonna say it's impossible, but it's tough to imagine.
I think that, like, I don't know. This is just like a complete think, but like, what if a team like Carolina did say, like, look, like, we're really into Claude Giroux. We know he wants to win a Stanley Cup. We believe that we can. I mean, like, I think if the Hurricanes get Claude Giroux, I think they're going to win the Stanley Cup, or maybe not win, but I definitely think the Eastern Conference.
They're in there.
I think the Eastern Conference Finals would definitely be their floor. I mean, like, what if they're just like, yo, like, Philly, can you retain like $2 to $3 million? Like, I think the Flyers, like, out of respect to Claude Giroux, would have to say, like, yo, like, you know what, that's fine. Like, we'll take $2 million in salary if it means that our captain can go have a chance at winning the Stanley Cup. And I just think it's the respect factor of Claude Giroux. Like, he's only played for that team. He's been loyal to the Philadelphia Flyers. I think the Flyers as an organization owe it to him to give him a shot. And he's also just been so quiet. Like, he's never really said anything, you know. Just came out Bobby Clark about Cale Makar and how everyone wanted Cale Makar, and instead they took Nolan Patrick, and now they traded Nolan Patrick, and Claude Giroux's just been Claude Giroux throughout. I think the Flyers owe it to him to bite a little bit if that's what it means.
And if you want to go, Jared, I don't know. I was just
I was just going to agree with this point. I think it is a very valid point. It's definitely out of respect for him. I could see the Philadelphia Flyers kind of making a little bit of a personal sacrifice in order to do right by their captain. I think that's absolutely something that can happen. And you're right. I'm trying to look now on Cap Friendly at another team that, like, a big contending team that I could see being in the mix. But there's like Carolina's probably the one that I'd put that most likely.
Well, I was also just looking at teams that need a second center, and I just think if you
I think the fit is absolutely there on Carolina. So that's what I was just going to agree with you. But no, Mario, you could go because I don't really have anything to add. I'm just saying, great point.
I'll bring up maybe a couple teams. I don't know how cap friendly it is, but I'm sure, like we were talking about, if you want to give and if seniority and loyalty can go a long way, which I think with Philadelphia and Claude Giroux respectfully it can. I think maybe the Rangers you can take a bite at. These are contending teams maybe for a little bit longer in the future. The Rangers aren't there yet, but give it a couple of years. I don't know.
I think given Claude Giroux's age and like what he has left in the tank. He needs to go to a team, and he probably wants to go to a team that can win the cup this year.
So what you're saying is you gotta be putting up a case like the Carolina Hurricanes could win right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's 34 years of age. Like, how much more time does he really have left?
It's a good point.
And I don't think, like, if he wants to wait around, then, like, why would he leave Philadelphia? You know what I mean? Like,
no, yeah. And then, but you narrow the list now you're narrowing it very thin, because right now with a team that's going to contend and you know that they're going extremely for the cup right now, I don't know, you put Colorado in there, you put, do I dare say Vegas, but they got enough problems.
Vegas can't.
They just got Eichel. They're not getting.
They're not
Claude
going.
Giroux.
Yeah, exactly. They're not going.
What more depth, they're not getting Claude Giroux.
What more do they need? I root for Vegas. It's like, fuck.
That'd be pretty sick.
That power play unit.
That's NHL GM mode without.
I was just gonna say you're building a franchise mode team at that point. Like, honestly, for the chaos, I'd like it, because it would be like,
we love chaos here.
This expansion team just stepped into the NHL, went to the finals, and then a few years later, they stole every single player's big name players. So like, every single team's big name players. Like, that would be just
all right. Well,
bullying.
So I think we're all like, Colorado is different because they just have a lot of depth at center that I don't think he would fit. Because here's the thing with Colorado, you're not moving Nazem Kadri down to the third line. And I don't think
you ain't.
No, and I don't like, and Claude Giroux also has the ability to play left wing, but I think he's just he's a center at heart. So I just don't think Colorado makes sense, and they also just don't have the cap space for him, and I just don't see them trading someone of equal value, of equal cap space, that would say like, oh, we're comfortable giving up, because I don't mean like giving up Landeskog or something in terms of cap space, or even a guy like Eric Johnson, but I just don't think they want to give up those guys.
And just to say one thing on Philly, they're in a bad spot right now. Like that offseason killed them, man. Like they gave up a lot of draft capital, a lot of things that you should be looking forward to in the future. They thought this was their year, quite frankly. And then the Cale Makar stuff comes out. Like, it is not a good place right now in Philadelphia. Get Giroux out of there, please. I need to see him do something worthwhile, because he's had a terrific career. I want to see him get the ring.
So I want to switch positions now. We're going to goaltender, and the team that we're narrowing in on is the Edmonton Oilers, who I think are moving on from either Mikko Koskinen or Mike Smith. I think it's just whatever. But it kind of just reminds me of the situation in Vegas, although Vegas was a happier situation where they're trying to figure out, should we move on from Leonard or Fleury? I think they made the right decision keeping Leonard, just in terms of age. But God, like, it's just horrible. And it's even worse that Mikko Koskinen's making $4.5 million, because I mean, that his agent should be in the Hall of Fame. If you want to talk about who should be in the Hall of Fame, I think Mikko Koskinen's agent should be first ballot next year.
100%.
I mean, like, what do you, like, obviously. And just with Mike Smith, I think it's harder to, again, with age. That's why, like, last year, Robin Leonard's name was being brought up in trade talks, because it was hard for teams to take Fleury in, given how much he's making in the age. But with Mikko Koskinen, it's just tough. I was having a hard time figuring out where he's going, because I think in order for the Edmonton Oilers to be even relevant in the playoffs, they need a better goaltender. And I know we were just talking about him last night. What about the veggie, man? I mean, although he doesn't get like wins, I mean, he actually is pretty decent. Like he reminds me kind of like a Linus Ullmark situation.
Oh yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
Like he has a 910 save percentage with the Arizona Coyotes, which would probably be a 1,000 with any other team. And although he has a 3.17 goals against average, I just think, my God, like if Edmonton had him, I just think that would be incredible. And I don't know like how confident, the Coyotes would be in.
They're not moving him, I don't think.
In trading him. I mean, he's 25 years old.
He's 25?
So, yeah.
Wow, I didn't
he was
know
playing
that.
in the KHL for a while. But I mean, like with Arizona, it's all just about acquiring picks. And I'm looking at, oh my God, they have like 1,000 picks in this. They have 3 first-round picks this year. They have 5 in the second round. I mean, who's to say that like they don't want to just add more picks and picks and picks? And I just think like if Edmonton could get him, like I just think that would be incredible. And I think they could I think they could actually do wonders if they had a guy like the veggie.
Edmonton has no bargaining power whatsoever now with goaltending. They can't, like, if you're going to go the Arizona route, they're not. You're giving up so many picks, not even fun. You're giving up picks at the wazoo to get this guy because you need a goaltender that bad. Everyone knows that you're desperate for this. The only position you need, and even depth, you could even throw in there as well. But more than ever, you need a goaltender to at least now at this point contend. So
Hughes to say that like Edmonton can be like, yo, we'll give you Koskinen in our first round pick in the 2022 draft. Because now Arizona has 4 first round picks, and all they've been doing. Arizona also, they're in a situation where like they need to hit the cap floor.
I was about to say, yeah.
So like who's like in Koskinen's still like decently aged. I think he's like 29, I believe it is. So like who's to say that like Edmonton's like, yo, we'll give you first rounder and Mikko Koskinen. Mm-hmm. Now Arizona has 4 first round picks, and they're like extremely built for the future. Jared, what do you think?
Yeah, you go, Jared. You go.
Well, really, I was going to say earlier when you're talking about a guy like Veggie, it reminds me a lot of Thatcher Demko earlier in the season, where it's a goalie that's doing his part, but the team is just not helping him out whatsoever around him. There's negative goal support there. So I think I was just going to say that. And in general, yeah, I agree. I think a guy like that, or you could think of even a few examples around the league of just goaltenders that maybe could be on the move. And I think Edmonton absolutely is going to be a team in on them. But the thing that Mario said that's very interesting to me is the fact that they have no ability right now to bargain, because like they're the team that everyone knows, like, we know what you guys want. Like they have no ability to bargain because they are just so desperate for a goaltender that they're going to have to end up overpaying there. And it's going to end up hurting them more than probably, I'm not going to say hurting them more than helping them, because at the end of the day, if they do get a goalie, that's literally the biggest thing they need. Yeah. But in general, they're going to have to give up a lot, and it's going to be very hard to be the GM in that situation, because, I mean, Ken Holland is not going to have a very fun time having to tell the team, yeah, we need to sell half of you guys in order to get this new goalie, or we need to blow up all of our first-round picks, or get rid of whatever you want to say. So I just think they're going to have to give up a lot, but at the end of the day, it will be worth it if they end up getting a goaltender that is going to help a team that should have no problem contending with the stars they have finally be able to contend. So I think it's a mess in Edmonton. I think it's so embarrassing. I keep going back to it because it's just so ridiculous that with the stars they have, there's no reason it should be that bad. But goaltending is absolutely the biggest issue there, and they're going to need to give up a lot in order to fix it.
Yeah, that's actually where I disagree with you there, because I think if you give up Koskinen in a first-round pick, that's very intriguing to Arizona, because they're in like such a they already told their fans we're selling the house, and I just think if they can get a first-round pick and Mikko Koskinen, you still have a goaltender there who's decent enough to just like keep you afloat, and then you also get a 5th first-round pick, like.
You're beating up. I absolutely see what you're saying. You're beating up on a guy. It reminds me when I was a kid and you see someone who has no clue, trading cards. Like I live in Bolton. We used to collect, I don't know if you did, Jared, down in Vaughan. Remember those soccer cards for the World Cup in like 2014 Brazil? I don't know if they ever made their way to Vaughan. I remember like
Pokemon cards and stuff.
Okay.
Like that.
Well,
I know what you're talking about.
Trading cards, whatever it may be. You see someone who has no clue about what they're doing and they have one of the better cards in the deck. You're going to do whatever you can to, I wouldn't say rip them off, but you're going to try to get, you have no bargaining power, because you're going to try to give the guy who has the very, very rare card and has no clue what he's doing. He's going to give it for nothing. He doesn't know what he's going to set his value at. The Arizona Coyotes and their owner, he doesn't care about this team whatsoever. We know this. Arizona's ownership has no care in the world. They're trying to get their team to the cap floor as much as possible. They don't want to have nothing to do with the Arizona Coyotes. They're not going to care what they get in return. That's why Koskinen in a first, that's can happen because you're beating up on a team, or I wouldn't say beating up, but you're taking advantage of a team that has no clue what they want. It's a very easy thing. Koskinen in a first for the Arizona Coyotes, like, oh yeah, we want that. But any other team that has that kind of goalie in their system, they're asking for 2 firsts, maybe, if that may be, or a first and a second, something way more higher. I think if you're going to go Arizona, you're going in for a steal, Edmonton. But any other team, you've lost your bargaining power. And I want to ask this one before we switch over, just a quick yes or no.
I made a mistake. Koskinen has a mid no move clause, so
really I
don't think Arizona's happening after all.
Never mind.
Does the Buffalo goaltender, Lukkinen, I think his name is, does he Uko Pekka, whatever his name is.
He's a rookie though, so
I
think he's on his entry level still.
That's what I was gonna say. I don't know much about him, but I know he's doing well in Buffalo.
Yeah,
similar
he's
to
still
what
on his
Allmark
entry.
did, so.
He's still on his entry level, so like he can't be like he could be traded, but they're not going to for free.
Mhm.
And also, I lied. Koskinen's 33, so
Man, you're lying all over Koskinen, man.
yeah, I thought he was a lot younger, but those were in his KHL days.
It just makes it worse for Edmonton, though. Like you really shot yourself in the foot without developing a goaltender. They're in big trouble.
Yeah, they're screwed. Well, because like they had Stuart Skinner, but he just hasn't done. He hasn't. I think like Edmonton just they missed on the draft when they drafted Stuart Skinner because they thought he could come in and be what Thatcher Demko is to the Canucks, but it just didn't work out that way, and now they're kind of like in an oh shit moment.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. You want to move on to? I don't know. Do you want to move on to any other players? Because I think the goaltending situation is what it is.
Yeah, I had another one. Like I had like maybe one or two left, and then we can wrap it up. And another one that I was thinking of is Ricard Raquel of the Anaheim Ducks, who is he's a UFA in July. So things could really get interesting there. He's had a little bit, I would say, a little bit of a roller coaster career, to say the least. He's had years where he's pot 25 goals, and other years where he's just been awfully quiet, and he is 28 years of age, so I think the value there is intriguing for a guy like Ricard Raquel. Teams that I could see getting him, I really think Minnesota. Like I think they really need depth, and they have guys like Marcus Foligno and Matt Zuccarello, but I just think having depth there and also giving him the opportunity to play on a contending team, and they do have a little bit of cap space to deal with. I think like a trade of players would definitely happen. I think maybe a guy like Kevin Fiala could go the other way. He's a RFA at the end of this year, but God, I just think like he could definitely be on the move. I'm just trying to think of maybe other guys. Maybe I don't know about Jonas Brodin. I mean, they just signed a massive deal. Never mind. That's out of the picture. But I don't know. I was just throwing out teams here. It's kind of hard when guys are UFAs because you just don't know the value. But guys, where do you think? It's just I find it too difficult with UFAs that are coming up.
I think Ricard Raquel, he's a good player.
Wait, sorry, switch that. The Rangers. All right, there we go.
Oh, the Rangers is your prediction for Raquel?
If he does get moved.
I think that's possible. I think that definitely isn't out of the question, because they're going to be in on a guy who obviously they have their superstars there, but I think they're absolutely trying to fill out the rest of the roster with people who are going to be like solid and make them compete all throughout. Because I think that is an issue with them as well. I think they have their superstars there and have their young kids, but they kind of don't have great forward depth. So I think Ricard Raquel is an option. For some reason, the first team that came to mind, as much as I'm all for the mindset of if he goes anywhere, he probably wants to get out of Anaheim and go to a contending team. But I don't know why, for some reason, New Jersey came to my mind. I just think he's a kind of player that I could see playing alongside a guy like a Jack Hughes, who he's a sort of a similar playing style where he's just like a quick skating, puck moving type of guy who he's had years where he's been able to put it together and get some offensive scoring. But this year, it's just not really happening. I just looked at his stats. He has about 16 points in 29 games right now. So not good enough at all. But I think he has enough talent there that for a team on the rise, he can maybe become part of that new up-and-coming core. So that's one where it's a team that has cap space. And that just, I don't know, it's a team that just right away to me kind of jumped out at me a little bit. Initially, the team I wanted to say, which I looked at it, it's just not going to happen. I wanted to say like, oh, he's going to go right to a contending team, even like a Tampa, whatever, but there's just not the cap space there, and it's just not going to end up working out in that case. As nice as it would maybe be, where of course a team like Tampa, where they just lost Barclay Goodrow and Yanni Gordon, are looking for forwards to replace them. I think in theory it would make sense, and that would be the type of player that they'd want to hopefully go for a three-peat. I just, based on cap space, don't think that's going to work out. So I think if Ricard Raquel does go on the move, unfortunately for him, I don't think he would be going to a contender. I think he would probably be going to one of those teams that has a lot of cap space and is kind of in the middle ground a little bit. But I think New Jersey is definitely an interesting one for sure.
No, I actually really like that, because by the time Rickard Rakell's about like 31, 32, I think they'll already be a really established team. You know, like Luke Hughes will most likely be up there. Dougie Hamilton will be familiar with the team. Jack Hughes will probably be like in his prime throughout. And they also have Severson. They have Jesper Bratt, I believe. If they did, I knew they traded one defenseman. I can't remember if that was Jesper Bratt.
No, that was Will Butcher, you're thinking.
Will Butcher, my bad, to Buffalo. But I honestly, like, they have the space, because once PK Subban's off the books, I mean, they could definitely sign Rakell. And I don't know if you want to do a prediction on his contract. I think he would get 4 times 4.5, and I think that would be a deal that he's willing to take her. And that also just allows them to kind of like assess where they're at. And then he'll be 32, and it's like, oh, if we want to re-sign him, then get him at another deal at maybe 3 times 3.5, or maybe even 3 times 4, and see if they just want to like bridge it out.
Are we talking here, just so my understanding is complete, are we talking more of a trade that's going to happen this season, or
because he's a UFA?
He's a UFA.
I guess a trade, and then they have to sign him at the end of the season. Like
I'm expecting him to get traded somewhere and not be a rental, because he's 28 years old, so a team's probably going to want to like sign him right away.
So what is the value? And this is what makes it really strange for me, at least, because the Anaheim Ducks and the New Jersey Devils, in my opinion, are in somewhat similar spots right now. So what is the value that's going to go from New Jersey to Anaheim? Like, are you going to burn some of your prospect capital, something that you're somewhat trying to collect, going back to Anaheim?
I think a second round pick and like a mid-level prospect, and maybe a few mid-level prospects would be fair, because with all the respect to Rickard Rakell, he had one great year, 2017, 2018, 34 goals, 69 points in 77 games. But that was just, in my opinion, a fluke year, just based off, 28 points last year in 52 games, 42 and 65, 43 and 69, 51 and 71. You know, like, I think a second round pick and 2 mid-level prospects would be more than fair. And I think maybe actually like a 6-year deal at 4.5 with a team, because he's going to want longevity. That's what players want, is security. So I think a 6-year deal at 4.5 would be definitely fair for what he can bring you.
I do think, though, that the Ducks can juice a little bit more value out of a contending team if they so choose for than New Jersey would. That's just my opinion. I don't know. New Jersey, like you said, I think you said a second rounder and a mid-level prospect.
Or maybe a first rounder. I don't know.
If it's a first rounder, I think it's right up the Ducks' alley. But if it's a second because I think a contending team would maybe be a little bit adequate to, because Rickard Rakell, he's a pretty decent player.
I would say a first rounder and 2 mid-level prospects for Rickard Rakell, and like a sign and trade.
Now, is that coming from a contending team, or is that coming from the Devils? I can't see it from the Devils.
Well, look, I also think the Devils could contend. Like, I really like the way that they're built. Like, I think they do need to improve a little on goaltending. I'm not a huge fan on Mackenzie Blackwood, but even though I don't think they have a great backup goaltending, and you notice like a lot of the contenders, they have a 1A and 1B. So I definitely think the potential is there, because Tampa's eventually going to burn out. Boston, Marchand and Bergeron are getting up there in age. You know, they're eventually going to burn out. Chicago's going to burn. I mean, they already technically burned out with Taves and Kane, and then they shipped away Keith. I think like I'm really high on the Devils, and they have a lot to work with. They have a lot of prospects that can definitely make this team interesting. And I think adding Rickard Rakell can also just bolster Jack Hughes immensely.
Speeds up the timeline, that's for sure. But Jared, you take this one, wrap it up.
Well, I was going to add one more thing that I think helps the argument for New Jersey being the target for sorry, I'm blanking on the name, Rickard Rakell. I think it works out because, as much as I agree with your point that the teams are absolutely at very similar points kind of in the rebuild, I think the difference is that while Anaheim is still looking for prospects, it is just a step behind. New Jersey in the fact that they already signed guys like Dougie Hamilton. It shows that they're trying to get to that next stage.
Yeah.
So I think as much as they're at very
Raquel will speed it up for sure. Raquel will speed up that process. 100%.
So that's why I think New Jersey sends a couple prospects back, while New Jersey acquires a guy who will definitely help project them into relevancy. I think they're right at that perfect point in their rebuilds that they can be very good trading partners for each other. Because I think New Jersey, just considering the fact that they're just coming out of the rebuild, or you could argue that they're still in the tail end of it.
I just think they're like a few steps ahead of Anaheim.
Very little, very marginal. And I think you're absolutely right with that, Jared. I think you're right.
I think a little bit more than minimal.
The fact that they signed a guy like Dougie Hamilton, it shows that they're definitely, now they are looking at the future long down the line. They're starting to try to be a contender now. And for that reason, I think they're at the perfect point that they could be a very, both of them could kind of help each other and be a very good trading partner for each other. In one hand, New Jersey giving them some prospects to help their rebuild, whereas Anaheim's giving them a player that could really help jumpstart them into being a contender.
Could I interject real quickly before we wrap it up? I think it's also very important that Dougie Hamilton signed for 6 years or 7 years that it was, because then it allows other guys to be like, oh, well, he committed for so long.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, because it just shows the whole team that now they're committed to this few years forward. Like, they're committed to now being a winning team, rather than, oh, we're not signing anyone long-term because we don't know what our core is going to look like down the line. I think it's a very good sign, especially when attracting trade partners and free agents and whatever you want to say. It's a very good sign that they're kind of advertising that this is our core. We're building on this core. We're not just blowing it up and showing no consistency and commitment to our group. So I think it's very good. And I think, as much as, yes, there's absolutely, I can see the route where Rickard Rakell goes to a contending team, because I think that really for him, even, he wants to go on a run, of course, after years in Anaheim, kind of at the bottom of the league. I think he would hypothetically want to go to a contender. And if the right deal is there, I think that's probably the best case scenario. But I absolutely think that Anaheim and New Jersey very much are at points in the rebuilds that, if there isn't a trade with a contender there, I could very much see that being a trade that ends up working out. Yeah,
and the contender I think we discussed was the Rangers, because they just wing depth is something that they really need. They have Panarin and Strome and Kreider and all those guys, but they don't really have that depth chart that they are hoping for.
And I mean, the contending, I think a contender is going to be probably going to be the last thought we say on this Rickard Rakell deal, but a contender is going to be much more suited for the Anaheim Ducks to work with, because I think they can still 100% milk a little bit more from what they're going to give than the Devils. But if you're the Devils, listen, if you go get Rakell, that's going to show a lot of players around it within the NHL that you are going out to go get a guy like this, and you're trying to improve your team in the moment. If you can sign him for a little bit longer, like a Dougie Hamilton, because like you mentioned, Evan, everyone's looking for a longer deal. That's sort of what this league's trending towards. You want longevity and you want certainty. If you're going to go sign a longer deal, you're showing every single player in the National Hockey League, this team is legit. They're going to be good in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And I think it's going to attract a lot more names. So this Rickard Rakell deal can really reap the benefits for the Devils if it were to go down that route. And don't even worry about the prospects, because you can deal with that if you're getting a guy and you're going to work it out that way I just said.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's it. I think we covered some of the more interesting names. Obviously, there's a ton, but those are just kind of smaller guys that it's hard just to assess their value, because it's just salary dumps, But yeah, I think that was great. Loved hearing your guys' predictions. I thought it went really well.
Yeah, this is awesome.
All righty.